You know, if you're reading the Christmas story these days, if you're familiar with the Bible's story of the birth of Jesus, you surely know that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. And you probably have figured out that Mary and Joseph didn't live in Bethlehem. They lived in Nazareth. Now, these two small towns, Nazareth and Bethlehem, were about 70 miles apart. Travel wasn't so easy 2,000 years ago as it is today. And since we're all in the Christmas spirit these days, I thought you might like to see the journey this couple took as they made their way from the Galilee in the north to Judea in the south. Welcome to a two-part Christmas edition of Secrets from the Ancient Past. I'm so glad you're joining us. I hope our next few minutes together will help you visualize something new about this amazing historical story of the birth of Jesus. The journey of Christmas seems straightforward enough. Mary and Joseph needed to travel from Nazareth to Bethlehem because of a Roman census. Now, if they wanted the shortest trip possible, all Mary and Joseph had to do was head south, cross into the heartland of Israel, and keep walking until they came to Bethlehem. But the heartland of Israel was called Samaria, and that's a problem. Jewish residents generally did not go through Samaria. It was dangerous. Tensions between Samaritans and Jewish people had been simmering for centuries, and sometimes those tensions boiled over. It really wasn't a safe place for Jewish families to be. Ironically, the heartland of Israel is still a place of tension between Jews and the residents who live in the West Bank today. If you head into the West Bank today, or biblical Samaria, you'll see some large signs from time to time that warn Jewish travelers not to go past certain points in the West Bank. And it warns them in 3 languages. And just a few days ago, yet another incident, an ugly incident, occurred when 2 Jewish travelers made a wrong turn inside the West Bank. They escaped unharmed, but a mob burned their car. It was yet another reminder that biblical Samaria still isn't a safe place for Jewish people. I'm telling you, it's almost certain that Joseph had never traveled through Samaria. His family didn't make that a practice. Few people in Nazareth would have known the way through the heartland. On top of everything else, Mary was pregnant. Joseph knew that the two of them would be an easy target for anyone who wanted to hurt them. Remember, they would have had to have traveled for at least 3 days to get through Samaria. They would have spent at least 2 nights in hostile territory. It wasn't a quick trip. It wasn't a safe route. It wasn't a route they were familiar with. I am sure they did not go through the heartland. Instead, they almost certainly took the Jordan River Valley route to go to Bethlehem. The Jordan River Valley is the route where all Jewish people traveled. There's plenty of water and food along the way. This was the route that Joseph and Mary had traveled before, assuming their families had taken them to Jerusalem for Passover. And that's a good assumption. Mary and Joseph must have come from very observant Jewish families. In fact, Mary and Joseph took their own growing family to Passover in Jerusalem for years to come. So it's almost certain they've already made this journey many times as children and as teenagers. They would have descended from Nazareth into the Jezreel Valley, and using the good roads guarded by the Romans, they would have needed about a day to get to Beit Shan. Beit Shan was a pagan city, so it's unlikely Mary and Joseph went inside the city walls. Instead, they probably kept walking a bit further and spent that first night in the wide open plains of the Jordan River Valley. They were camping out. If so, Mary and Joseph covered a bit more than 20 miles on their first day of hiking. Hey, here's a question that I always have to ask at Christmas. Did Mary ride a donkey? You know, we hope she did. It looks more comfortable. Our Christmas cards and Christmas movies have always said she had a donkey. Only problem, the Bible doesn't say that. She might have walked the whole way. But then again, Joseph was a carpenter. The carpenters I know all have pickup trucks. They have a lot of equipment to carry. So maybe Joseph had his version of a pickup truck. Maybe he had a donkey. And maybe Mary rode it. But I'm telling you still, if you've got a pregnant woman in your life, don't suggest to her at any time along the way, especially late in the pregnancy, that she might want to get on the back of any kind of pack animal and take a long journey. It's just not a good Christmas gift. Now, back to the journey itself. Mary and Joseph would have needed at least 2 days to travel the 40 miles or so between Beit Shan and Jericho. All along the way, they would have had an easy, level walk. The Jordan River was never far away. A number of other water sources and plenty of food sources would have also been available all along the route. And most important of all, it was friendly territory for Jewish people, and this is the way they both would have known. They had made the trip before. As the Jordan River Valley nears Jericho, the land changes dramatically. Instead of the green farmland that looks so comfortable, now there's rocky desert land. Now there's still water all along the way, but it's more difficult to come by. No doubt Mary and Joseph were anxious to get to Jericho. The young couple would have found plenty of options for food and temporary lodging in Jericho. Hospitality has been a characteristic of this well-watered community for centuries. Jericho is an oasis tucked between the Judean wilderness to the south and the Benjamin Desert just to the west. Now, Jericho is also the lowest city on earth, and that is an important detail. Bethlehem is high atop the Judean mountains. It's right on the ridge. Technically, Bethlehem is higher even than Jerusalem. Now, that last stretch of travel for Mary and Joseph was going to be very difficult indeed as they go from very low Jericho to very high Bethlehem. They would have followed a path leading into a canyon southwest of Jericho. It's called Wadi Kelt if you're looking for it today, and it is indeed the path that Jewish travelers took as they journeyed up to Jerusalem. I believe almost everyone you've ever read about in the Bible knew this path. Now, how can I be so certain that this route is the route that so many people in the Bible knew? Because it has water. The Benjamin Desert stretches for 10 miles to the north with no easy path through it and no water to speak of. The Judean wilderness stretches for more than 60 miles to the south. The land is so rough it's almost impossible to imagine a road there, and only the oasis of En-Gedi provides any water of substance at all in that entire distance. It's kind of an obvious point, but if you're going to walk to Bethlehem, you're going to need water. Water is life, and even today, the water in Wadi Kelt is carefully transported to the farms of Jericho. And maybe you're looking at these images and thinking some anxious thoughts. I've walked part of this road, and I'm telling you, there's good reason for the anxiety. The path is very narrow. The canyon is very deep. You fall here, well, it's probably going to be the last day of your life. And the climbing is constant. It's not impossible, but you'd better be in good shape if you want to make it all the way up to Jerusalem, or in the case of Mary and Joseph, to Bethlehem. And if you dare try this trip while you're pregnant, oh my, or if you're a husband trying to keep your pregnant wife's spirits up, it wouldn't be a bad idea to pray on this road. And I think that's exactly what Mary and Joseph did. They prayed a prayer their parents had taught them and their grandparents had taught their parents. It's a prayer right in the heart of your Bible. It's called a Psalm of Ascents, which means it's a climbing song. I lift my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? Well, my help comes from the Lord, the maker of the heavens and the earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and your going, both now and forevermore. Maybe that's a word you need to hear today on your own difficult journey. All of us have times when life is hard. All of us have known seasons of life when circumstances are difficult, when grief becomes an unwelcome guest in our homes. Difficult circumstances, grief, boy, it can be especially tough during the holidays. So if you are struggling on your own journey today, I want you to remember Mary and Joseph. Yes, they had a tough journey, but God had asked them to be on that journey, and they kept walking. They had to get to Bethlehem. And so even if they didn't understand all that God was doing, they knew that God had brought them this far and that God would see them all the way home. And that will be true for you and me to on all the difficult journeys of our own lives. Now, when we return to complete this two-part Christmas series on Secrets from the Ancient Past, we're going to be in Bethlehem, and I hope to see you there. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Andy Cook.